As a loose definition, perception is picking up data you notice. With so much information in the environment that could be overwhelming, we select what we want to absorb. This forms our preference and helps us to filter what is relevant. We piece together bits of information to form a picture and understanding. It structures the basis of your reality. If done improperly, an imbalance could be built in that negatively impacts decision making. Despite how potent facts can be, important details might be missed. Context, for example. Facts on their own don't necessarily mean truth, and these gaps in perception can give the wrong impression. And if someone were nefarious enough, they could take advantage. It is not possible to get a 100% representation of reality. An approximation that is good enough to be compatible with the real world will suffice. You could still make decisions that go against the information you've received. Reality is okay with this, as long as you can conform within its parameters when necessary. Reality actually encourages you to dream. Slipping into our own little private worlds within its superstructure is actually quite common. It is necessary and beneficial to have a bit of a break from time to time. Maybe indulge in a movie. You only get one life, but in having these excursions, you have the freedom to experiment and try things in safety. Reality can only provide you with so much, so it allows you to fumble and grow through other channels in hopes that you can find meaning and such to complement it. This isn't an excuse, meaning you're free to just live in La La Land permanently and make things up. It is important to regulate awareness of when you're being imaginative and when you're being down to earth. It is your responsibility to be aware of these things as best you can. If you cannot tell the difference, you have a problem. Every so often, you must pay homage to reality. As painful as it can be to receive a kick, if you think life is being mean to you, right there you should question your perception before it becomes victimhood. Proceeding, we have interpreting. This creates a sense of meaning, and from there, beliefs are formed. If we question what is the meaning of life without first asking how am I interpreting life, we will not consider the merit of our profound answer. No wonder then, if what you interpret is pain, you will derive the meaning of life to be suffering. This is not wisdom. This is what you have experienced and attached meaning to and created a belief around. People who are hopeful have interpreted differently. They may have had the exact same kind of experience, but always seeing sunshine and rainbows is not an accurate depiction of reality either. It seems hard for humans to balance both viewpoints at the same time, resulting in all or nothing. There is suffering, but there is also happiness, and there are things in between. Along the way of forming a worldview, attributes are added to create a system of operations. How to conduct yourself accordingly, your ambitions, motivations, purpose, your ethos, your principles, rules, socializing, relationships, and gradually you become more stable and secure depending on the reliability of your perception. So far so good. All is well when you can make sense and archive information accurately. Misinterpretations. Having insufficient data or the inability to trust perception leads to distortions in thinking. This is partly why it can be difficult to spot because it resembles reality. These errors can cause interpretations to become out of touch. For normal, secure people, upon realizing there's been a misunderstanding, typically they're interested to want clarification, and some growth takes place along with gaining better self-awareness. They might be a little shocked or surprised, maybe say something like, I had the wrong idea, can't believe I used to think like that, and perhaps they're relieved to have noticed the misinterpretation. They manage to reattach to reality, are secure for the most part. They don't need to trick, and they can allow people to have their own opinions. They can afford to theorize because they have self-awareness. The corrupt, however, won't theorize, they instead make demands. Upon knowing you're dealing with an imbecile, you must change your own perception and eliminate the idea that you're dealing with a rational person. The deceitful may try to adopt these principles as a way of pretending to be secure and go undetected, but watch how they can't let their pathology go, and how much it bugs them. For people who aren't secure in their sense of being mistaken, all of this is horrifying. Presented with a twisted landscape, without intervention, fabricating is required to make sense. A low resolution of an alternative reality starts to form. As what is relevant takes priority, the created landscape is mainly a projection of insecurities. Fears and concerns become magnified. To calibrate now in this state of detachment is dangerous. Jumping to conclusions with a narrow viewpoint is necessary to block out data that would reveal the mental leaps in logic. The goal is to work backwards and make sense quickly, not to add to confusion. It is easier to believe it is a ghost you saw, even easier to believe you are personally oppressed, than to suggest your senses are unreliable. In this distorted world, they can now explain where they are and what it is they are seeing. This brings much needed security, and interpretation reframes the misunderstanding as new knowledge, truth, and fact. At this point, a closed system of circular logic has now formed. All the things we say that are good for you, confidence, fortitude, resilience, endurance, and so on, are contaminated to ensure that the person can stay protected or trapped inside a bubble. The fear of what perception may uncover in the real world prevents any investigation, which is like a form of diagnosing, from taking place. This includes pausing for thought or exercising critical thinking. These are dangerous practices for those who want to stay in their bubble and avoid accountability. Boundaries are not limited to just healthy people. It is the unhealthy who have the strongest of boundaries, which is why it's so difficult to get through to them. They believe what they want to believe. Despite them telling you so much that is true, with their unquestionable weight of evidence, they still need you to say it's true. If it's not working out how they would like, which it won't, you're typically blamed for not believing hard enough like they are, or your thinking is wrong, or you tricked them. There is some sort of magical reasoning, anything, that will maintain a perception or belief where they are not at fault and you are. There is nothing wrong with them, and their ability to interpret isn't malfunctioning. Deception has been inserted as a precursor and controls perception. It's working just how they want it. It's amazing how their fantasy becomes your responsibility, and thanks to you failing them, you've made them oppressed. They really are seeing a boogeyman, and it becomes a real experience because they can no longer tell the difference. Their conviction tantrum is part of this deception/perception mix to bully you into giving in. Plenty of conspiracy theories and magical thinkings are built upon misinterpreting data. These require fuel to sustain them. Reality, on the other hand, does not, and will continue to exist. Reality is independent of perception. Trying to use reality's infrastructure to molest public perception to support these magical claims and drown out evidence on the contrary invites questioning criticisms. These objections, however, are converted into perceived attacks. Awareness. In spite of this denial of reality, there is to some extent self-awareness that they are being deceitful. They are aware enough to understand quite accurately how you might perceive things. In these situations, they don't inhibit their perception. It is powered to be hypersensitive, and all information is collected for consideration. This tells us that their perception isn't actually faulty as such. It is not that they've overlooked something. They've chosen not to acknowledge it. It highlights that they are selective and control it. When it comes to having perspective about errors they might have about themselves, they block it out to allow themselves to get away with what they want. In both scenarios, perception is functioning as a form of defense to keep them strong. Protection from the outside world ruining things, and protection from their own inner knowledge that they've created a fantasy. Fleeting moments of realization are pushed aside by the ego's compulsion, forcing dissociation to happen. Yeah, but that doesn't apply to me. Or, yeah, but that's not what I'm doing. By keeping it separate, even though they might have the capability to perceive it, as seen when you catch them out in their arguments and force them to see it, they use interpretation to recontextualize and avoid having to own it, like an allergic response, because to them it is toxic. There is so much more to cover. Although we've been looking at perception of unhealthy, abusive types of people, it's important to study, as it's potentially a slippery slope if you're not careful. Please don't freak out, and it's normal to do a little checking in on yourself. The takeaway from this is that we're in a period of time where perception is under assault. The trick to avoid getting caught up in misdirection is self-awareness. In all cases, regardless of how healthy a person is, reality is forever present and does not care how many times you roll it up and repackage it. It sees the stupid things you do and laughs. So be kind to yourself and see it too.